Ashes of Creation has become something uglier and better for YouTube, a breakup story with lawyers, leaked ledgers, missing paychecks, and two sides screaming that the other side burned the kingdom down before the smoke cleared. Somewhere along the road, this stopped being a game story first and became public cannibalism, the kind where everybody still says they want to save the project while chewing through its face in daylight. Which is why the whole thing feels less like development trouble and more like a custody battle with server issues. Ashes of Creation used to sell scale, risk, player-driven chaos, and that rough dog with teeth energy MMO fans wanted after years of perfume ads with swords. But now, the brand walks on stage dragging a broken filing cabinet behind it, and that image tells you more than 10 years of promises ever did. Instead, viewers get a luxury expense thriller, an investor war, a labor nightmare, and a subreddit turned into a courthouse. Which is why average people, who could not name one node system, are suddenly clicking this story like it is a celebrity divorce with spell effects online right now. April 15th made the disaster impossible to treat as background noise, because Sharif posted a huge public rebuttal, attached new court material, renewed accusations against Intrepid's board, and said he still intends to finish the game. Which is incredible to read. When the internet thinks the furniture is on fire, Sharif framed the latest round as evidence of a coordinated misinformation campaign, and that matters, because it turns the story from one-sided scandal into audience warfare. The kind where the founder is not quietly letting lawyers speak for him, but running at Reddit with declarations, like a man clearing a dungeon with paperwork. Opposing reports and allegations make the whole thing filthier, because the other side has accused Sharif of fraud, financial malfeasance, and misappropriating millions for personal expenses. So the public no longer asks whether the MMO can ship first, and starts asking which side smashed the car, before trying to sell the wreck. Average viewers understand that question instantly, and that is why this blew past ordinary MMO drama. Because you do not need to know what Vera is to understand the visual comedy of a fantasy game collapsing into arguments about ledgers, private spending, and whether the people steering the ship were fighting over the wheel. Once the ledger allegations hit, the internet got its easiest point of entry, since reporting described claims involving a private chef, cigars, trading cards, antiques, auction buys, and other rich guy clutter. That made the whole conversation sound less like an MMORPG, and more like a chef replacing chicken with garnish, then billing customers for bones. Normies click faster when the receipt becomes the villain, because receipts are visual, receipts are stupid, and receipts are cruel. Which means the second the game stopped being the main character, and the ledger took center stage, the whole saga became editor candy. Crossfade the Dragon trailer into a spreadsheet, and watch the audience lean forward. Suddenly, all the old sales language about vision, patience, and trusting the process started sounding radioactive. Because crowdfunded MMOs do not live on systems first, they live on faith first, and once faith starts leaking through the floorboards, every promise in the genre begins to smell like a hostage video with better music. Later, the funniest part stops being funny, because this is where the story gets a moral center. And that center is not a founder, not a board member, not a YouTuber with a thumbnail face, but the workers who got ground into dust, while the adults above them fought over the castle. Underneath all the legal theater sits the worker story, and that is the part that should make people angry. Because former staff reporting described confusing layoff emails, unpaid final checks, alleged missing warrant pay, missing PTO payouts, and the kind of collapse where the people who built the dream are left holding boxes instead of salaries. Trust dies fast when the audience hears that some former developers were reportedly living out of their cars. Because every macho executive war story instantly loses its swagger once the collateral damage stops being abstract and starts looking like workers wondering where they are going to sleep after building somebody else's forever world. Kickstarter was never just money here, and that is why the fallout keeps spreading. Because Ashes raised millions on the promise of a shared future, a better MMO, a bigger gamble, and maybe even a genre correction, so watching that dream mutate into public accusations of sabotage and fraud poisons more than one project. Crowdfunding survives on one sacred illusion. Wait longer, believe harder, and eventually the giant thing will justify the years. But this disaster shoves a knife through that illusion in front of everyone, leaving future crowdfunded MMO trailers looking less like hope and more like perfume ads with swords read by a bankruptcy consultant. Meanwhile, Steam backing away helped the whole collapse look terminal instead of merely messy. Because when reporting said the game had been pulled from sale during the spiral, The vibe changed from legal chaos to building inspection failure, from messy breakup to neighbors quietly stepping away from the porch after hearing something explode inside. Workers make the strongest emotional footage in a story like this, because viewers have seen rich people fight before, and founders write giant statements before, but they still react when the camera cuts from declarations and signatures to desks getting cleaned out, Slack gone quiet, keycards dead, and rent still due on Friday. Steam pages disappearing, office chairs going empty, and community threads filling with blame, all give the same signal to the audience, which is why the outrage has legs. This is not abstract corporate smoke, this is visible failure, the kind you can cut between with brutal rhythm, until multitasking viewers understand the room is collapsing. Imagine the edit rhythm for a second. Dragon wings, legal filing ledgers, fantasy city, layoff email, sword swing empty desk, subreddit manifesto, storefront missing, dev quote, investor allegation, then back to a hero shot from an old trailer, while the narration asks the only question that matters now: which side gutted the project first? Publicly, Sharif's move on April 15th was not damage control in the normal sense, because normal damage control hides in law firm language and prays for silence. Whereas this was a counter-offensive launched at the audience, with Reddit text, declarations, investor material, and enough legal lore to make brand management look like fan fiction. Reddit is where authority cracked. Because once a founder posts legal epics to the subreddit like raid prep notes, the tone shifts from studio communications to digital trench warfare, and nobody watching thinks they are seeing a healthy company anymore. They are seeing the king explain the siege through a megaphone. Then the Riot angle arrives, and this is the part comment sections feast on. Because disaster becomes even more irresistible when it might have been avoidable at enormous scale, like hearing that the rough dog with teeth once had a clean escape route, but somebody waved it away and called that wisdom. Riot enters the frame like a ghost of the better timeline, with reporting on evidence Sharif presented about a possible investment or acquisition path in the roughly $250 million to $500 million range, which instantly turns the audience mood from simple disgust into a louder emotion, outrage at the idea that this implosion maybe did not have to happen. Mark Merrill later confirmed Riot had explored a deal before deciding not to proceed, and that detail is rocket fuel for every cynical viewer. Because nothing inflames people faster than the image of a nearly taken lifeboat drifting through the fog, while everyone on deck keeps arguing about who punched the hole. Comment sections love preventable disaster more than random disaster, since preventable disaster lets everybody play prosecutor, historian, and insult comic at the same time. Which is why the Riot thread matters beyond one business what if. It gives the internet a version of events where the train was not doomed until somebody grabbed the wheel and laughed. Online mood matters here, because YouTube stories travel farther when the audience is polarized, exhausted, and emotionally loaded before your upload goes live. And Ashes has that with MMO forums, Reddit threads, and gaming communities splitting between bored coup believers, Sharif skeptics, and people who think the house was made of lighter fluid. Cynicism is not a side effect in this story, cynicism is the engine. Because viewers are no longer watching with neutral curiosity or childlike hope, they are watching with sharpened contempt, with that modern feeling that every ambitious promise arrives with hidden legal fees and an emergency exit sign flickering outside the frame. Ultimately, that is why this video has shelf life beyond news cycles. Because the deeper critique is not merely about one founder or one board, but about what happens when a genre keeps selling faith while treating faith like free fuel, something to burn until the audience notices the room has no roof. Ambition can survive delays, confusion, and public testing, if the audience still believes the people in charge love the dream they are selling. But the second that belief dies, every trailer shot turns hollow, every speech sounds rehearsed, and every promise feels like a chef replacing the meal with garnish and calling it visionary. Nobody can build loyal viewers on headlines alone, which is why the closing truth needs to hit harder than the scandal. Ashes of Creation is now attached to an idea the audience recognizes, namely that horror can rot fantasy faster than any bad combat system, broken node plan, or delayed alpha ever could. Tragedy would have been the dream dying cleanly, quickly, and with enough dignity, for people to mourn it like a great project that reached too far. But what happened instead is uglier and more memorable, because the dream stayed alive long enough to leak, argue, sue, blame, and rot where everyone could watch. Afterward, the image that sticks is not the kingdom, not the classes, not the next great MMO, but a horror story wearing fantasy armor, twitching in public while lawyers, investors, developers, founders, forums, and storefronts signal the same lesson, which is that a dream can survive delay, but cannot survive public trust execution.